We tend to picture Antarctica in stark terms.
Oh.
A frozen, desolate continent at the bottom of the world. Just ice and penguins, maybe.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the standard image.
But what if that iconic image hides a far more complex and honestly surprising story?
Uh-huh.
What if recent discoveries and even some ancient whispers are hinting at a history we've barely begun to grasp?
That's the incredibly compelling territory we're venturing into today. We've been looking at the sources you shared, a really fascinating compilation, actually, from a YouTube video transcript.
Yeah, it pulls together a lot.
It really does. And it reveals an Antarctica that seems, well, brimming with potential secrets. Our goal in this deep dive is to explore these emerging narratives, try to distinguish what we know from what we're still trying to understand.
Separate fact from maybe speculation.
Exactly, and really get to the heart of these intriguing scientific finds and historical threads.
Right. Forget the penguins for a moment, as cute as they are. This transcript dives into some truly unexpected possibilities, stuff like ancient humans in the Antarctic, bizarre things happening under the ice.
It's quite a range.
Okay, let's unpack the first big surprise then.
Yeah.
This idea of an ancient human presence way down south.
Okay, so the discussion in the transcript kicks off with a discovery from 1995. It was in an Alaskan cave, ancient human remains, dated back around 10,300 years.
10,000 years, wow. Alaska, okay.
And these individuals are linked through Tlingit tradition to the Suka. It means something like the people who came before.
The people who came before.
Yeah, and often associated with caves, maybe even a connection to another realm in their stories.
Okay, kind of mythical sounding. And here's where it gets really interesting, right? The video then brings in this idea from Dr. Dennis Stanford.
Ah, yes. Stanford.
He apparently saw similarities between these Alaskan remains and a skull found much, much further south, on Half Moon Beach, Antarctica, back in 1985.
Right, the so-called Antarctic lady. And that skull is estimated to be much more recent, sort of 1500 to 1800 AD.
So not ancient like the Alaskan ones, but still Antarctica, before the known explorers.
Precisely. And if this Antarctic lady was genuinely native to the continent? Well, the implications are pretty significant, as the transcript points out.
Like land claims. Chile, maybe?
Theoretically, yeah, it could open that door, despite the Antarctic Treaty. But it maybe more fundamentally, it challenges the traditional, Bering Strait migration theory.
The one we all learned. Asia, across the land bridge, down through the Americas.
That's the one, which suggests humans migrated maybe 15,000 years ago, gradually moved south, hitting the tip of South America eventually. So if this woman was native...
How does that fit?
It doesn't really. It makes you ask, what does that fundamentally change about how we think humans populated the far south? It's not just about land claims, is it?
No, it really makes you rethink the whole timeline, the whole map. And then there's the DNA analysis Stanford did in 2017.
Right, the transcript mentions that. It reportedly suggested a close genetic link between the Sukar remains in Alaska, the Antarctic lady, and indigenous people in Chile and Tierra del Fuego.
Okay, connecting the dots there.
But here's the kicker. These genetic connections were apparently distant from groups like the Inuit, the Tlingit themselves, and Mongolians.
The very people you'd expect from the Bering Strait crossing.
Exactly. So it just adds to the puzzle.
This naturally leads to a speculative, but you have to admit, compelling question raised in the transcript. Could there have been some kind of prehistoric seafaring people with a presence in both the Arctic and Antarctic? Maybe even like Antarctica as a central hub.
It's a radical idea, no doubt. Pushes right up against the established models of how people spread out.
But to be fair, the transcript also reminds us that our understanding of those migration timelines is shifting anyway.
That's true. Science evolves. The Bering Strait crossing is now often placed further back, maybe around 25,000 years ago.
Right, and people reaching Tierra del Fuego by 14,000 years ago.
And this updated timeline tries to offer an alternative explanation for the Suka remains, suggesting a southward migration along the coast instead of needing some lost Antarctic civilization.
Okay, so maybe a way to explain the Alaskan find without rewriting everything?
Perhaps. But it still leaves us with the lingering mystery of the Antarctic lady.
Yeah, how did she get there? Between 1500 and 1800 AD? Before we think anyone was really exploring the continent itself.
It's still a puzzle. Does she represent some unknown connection with South America back then? How does she end up on that beach? We still don't have solid answers.
So the ancient human idea, definitely provocative. But what about later encounters? Let's shift to the early explorers and this, frankly, unbelievable tale involving a character called Dirk China.
Ah, yes, Dirk China. Before we get to him, the transcript mentions Admiral Bellingshausen's 1820 expedition. That's usually credited as the first confirmed sighting of the Antarctic mainland.
And tough going, right? Those currents.
Incredibly difficult. The circumpolar currents basically lock the continent away. But yeah, before him, we have this truly bizarre story of Dirk China.
Dirk China is a great name. What's the story? Apparently around 1600, this Portuguese navigator, Fernão de Oliveira, gets himself imprisoned in Chile.
Right, and while locked up, he starts claiming he's an envoy of the Chinese emperor.
Okay, bit odd.
And says he knows a secret route to China. And get this, claims he saw 2-kilometer-high ice walls in Antarctica.
2 kilometers? That's huge. People must have thought he was nuts.
Initially, yes. Understandably dismissed as, the ravings of someone who'd lost it. Geography was still pretty hazy back then.
Makes sense.
However, the transcript brings up a crucial point. Dirk China, Fernão de Oliveira, was a real person. And before he was imprisoned, he'd actually been pretty successful establishing trade routes to China and Japan.
Oh, so he wasn't just some random guy. He had credentials.
It adds a layer of, well, maybe not credibility, but certainly intrigue to his later claims.
It certainly does. And the story gets even weirder, doesn't it? Years later, after this supposed madness,
he recounts a voyage from 1599 through the Strait of Magellan. His fleet got scattered by storms.
Standard peril back then.
And his ship, the Nossa Senhora de Rosario, reportedly gets blown way off course, down to 64 degrees south latitude near a half-moon-shaped bay.
64 south. That's deep into Antarctic waters.
Very deep. And according to his account, he encounters these cave-dwelling natives.
Natives in Antarctica in 1599.
That's his story. They apparently described their land as the end of the world, surrounded by immense ice mountains. They also spoke of another world below, connected by caves.
An underworld.
Something like that. And that they were about to return underground. The transcript even mentions some of Dirk China's own crew disappearing with these natives into the caves.
Okay, that's chilling. Whether it's true or not, it's quite a tale. Makes you wonder about what might be under the ice.
It's fantastical, for sure.
And the weirdness keeps coming. Dirk China then claims he sailed east, encountering massive icebergs that made these strange sounds. Singing ice, he called it.
Singing ice.
Eventually, his ship breaks up in another storm. He somehow makes it to Chile, gets imprisoned, and tells these wild tales. Now, connect the dots for us, that location he mentioned.
The 64 degrees south, the Half Moon Bay. What's striking is the geographical overlap.
With what?
With the general area where the Antarctic lady's skull was later discovered.
No way. Same place.
Same general vicinity. Now, it could absolutely be a coincidence, but it's a coincidence that definitely fuels speculation about maybe an earlier human presence, or at least activity, in that specific region.
It's a very compelling link, even if it's just coincidence.
Right.
But okay, what's the more, let's say, grounded scientific explanation for the Antarctic lady being there?
Well, the transcript offers the more conventional scenario. She could have been a South American native, maybe from Tierra del Fuego, perhaps taken aboard a sealing ship or an early exploration vessel, maybe as a guide, a translator, someone familiar with hunting seals or sea lions in those waters.
Right, that seems plausible.
And sadly, the conditions were brutal. She might have died during the voyage, disease, cold, accident, and was buried ashore when the ship found shelter in that half-moon bay.
So, a tragic burial rather than evidence of a native population.
It fits within our current understanding of exploration, yeah. Doesn't require a hidden civilization. But again, it highlights how little we definitively know about those early, possibly unrecorded voyages near Antarctica.
Okay, that makes sense as an alternative. Now let's pivot from these historical accounts to something truly eerie and more recent. The music of the ice.
Ah, yes. The transcript mentions this discovery in 2017. Scientists were installing seismometers under the Ross Ice Shelf.
The big floating bit.
Huge. And they started detecting these strange sounds coming from the ice itself.
Not just cracking and groaning.
Apparently not. They described it as actual music complex sounds linked to the ice shelf's vibrations and how the wind moved across the surface snow dunes.
Weird, like the ice shelf is humming.
Sort of, yeah. And interestingly, the intensity of these sounds has reportedly been increasing over time.
Okay, why? What's the scientific take now?
The current understanding attributes this music mainly to the physical processes and the ice cracking, shifting collisions between ice blocks, maybe amplified by the structure. And a lot of that is likely being influenced by the effects of global warming, causing changes in the ice.
Right, warming leads to more instability, more movement, more noise. Makes sense.
But naturally, the transcript poses a more imaginative question.
Could this be related to Dirk China's singing icebergs and those natives talking about going to an inner world?
It's a very poetic connection, isn't it? Linking a wild 16th century tale to modern seismology.
It is tempting.
Very. But the scientific explanation is pretty firmly grounded in the physics of ice and wind dynamics. Well, the idea of something deeper, maybe even sentient, causing the sounds is, well, fascinating.
There's no actual evidence for that.
Not currently.
No, fair enough. Okay, sticking with things hidden under the ice, let's talk about this absolutely massive void discovered in 2017.
Right, this was a huge feature. The transcript describes it as a gigantic, elongated cavity, roughly the size of Ireland.
Ireland. That's staggering. 78,000 square kilometers. And visible on Google satellite imagery.
Apparently so, and here's a strange twist. The transcript says it appeared on a map from 1975, but then seemed to vanish from later maps before reappearing more recently.
It disappeared. How does a void the size of Ireland just disappear and reappear on maps?
That detail definitely adds to the mystery. The scientific thinking, as the transcript explains, probably relates to subglacial geology.
Okay.
Things like subglacial volcanoes, maybe ones that aren't very active, or just variations in heat flowing up from the Earth's mantle. If ocean waters nearby warm up, that could potentially increase melting at the base of the ice sheet in certain areas.
Creating these huge meltwater lakes or cavities under the ice.
Exactly. And the appearing and disappearing act, that could just be linked to the dynamic nature of it all. Periods of more melting than perhaps refreezing, or shifts in the ice flow that hide it or reveal it over time.
So natural geological and glacial processes just on a massive scale.
That's the most likely explanation, yes.
The transcript also briefly mentions lots of smaller meltwater lakes popping up around the coast. Apparently, Russian researchers have a cool name for them. Ice City Caves.
Yeah, Ice City Caves. It's evocative, isn't it?
It is way that name.
Probably because these meltwater pockets under the ice can connect up, forming these intricate networks, almost like, subterranean streets and buildings, but made of water channels within the ice.
Wow. And their theories about dark ice.
That's part of it, yeah. They suggest there might be layers within the ice that are darker, maybe containing dust blown from elsewhere, or even unusual microbes trapped inside.
And darker stuff absorbs more sunlight.
Exactly. So it melts faster from within, even if the air temperature isn't that high. It suggests the ice itself, its composition, plays a really active role in how it melts, not just the external climate.
Fascinating. Okay, let's move from ice cavities to something even more visually striking. The blood falls.
Ah, yes. McMurdo Dry Valleys.
Which are already weird, right? This ice-free area in Antarctica looks kind of like Mars.
Very much so. Extremely dry, cold, windy, and out of the Taylor Glacier there, you get this incredibly eerie red stream flowing out onto the ice. Looks just like blood.
So what causes that? The transcript mentions the traditional snowball Earth idea.
Sort of related, yeah. The generally accepted explanation is that there's a pool of ancient, super salty water trapped beneath the Taylor Glacier. It hasn't seen sunlight or oxygen for maybe millions of years. And there are microorganisms trapped in there too. Ancient microbes that have evolved to survive by metabolizing sulfate and iron from the bedrock.
Okay, so where does the red come from?
When that iron-rich water finally seeps out from under the glacier and hits the air, the iron oxidizes, basically. It rusts, and that turns the water that blood-red color. It's seen as this amazing natural laboratory, a window into a unique subglacial ecosystem.
Like life finding a way in the most extreme place.
Exactly.
But the transcript highlights newer research.
Right.
Dr. Ken Livermento.
He found something else there. Iron nanospheres.
Yes, abundant iron nanospheres. Now, these aren't just typical rust particles. What's different about them? What makes them significant?
They're tiny, perfectly spherical particles of iron. And finding them naturally occurring in such abundance there is quite unusual. Their specific structure is peculiar.
Which has led to some more out there ideas.
Well, yeah. Some speculation mentioned in the transcript includes possibilities like maybe they have an extraterrestrial origin, or perhaps they're even linked to some hypothetical subglacial technology.
Technology, like from a lost Antarctic civilization.
That's the extreme end of the speculation, yes. A more grounded, unusual source might be specific geochemical processes under the glacier, but the exact mechanism isn't fully understood.
And it gets even more interesting, right? The transcript mentions similar nanospheres have been found in Martian meteorites.
Correct. Meteorites from Mars that actually landed in Antarctica, ironically.
And even in lunar soil brought back by Apollo missions.
Right, so finding these structures in multiple off-world contexts certainly makes you pause and consider non-terrestrial origins, or at least some kind of formation process that isn't unique to Earth.
It definitely raises fascinating questions about how these tiny things form and where. But as you said, more research needed on the Blood Falls one specifically.
Absolutely. The link to alien tech is pure conjecture at this point. We need to rule out unique geological or biological processes under the glacier first.
Got it. Okay, now let's dive deep underground, literally, to something truly massive, the Wilkes Land gravity anomaly.
Ah, yes. Discovered back in 2006 using satellite data measuring gravity fields.
And it's huge, right? A massive disturbance in gravity, about 1.6 kilometers beneath the ice surface in Wilkes Land, stretching across 300 kilometers.
It's enormous. And the leading scientific explanations point to one of two things. Either it's a large mantle plume.
Like a hotspot of magma welling up from deep inside the Earth.
Exactly. Or it's the remains of an absolutely colossal impact crater buried deep beneath the ice.
An impact crater. How big are we talking? The transcript draws a comparison.
Yeah, it mentions the potential diameter could be around 500 kilometers, which is roughly the same size category as the Chicxulub impactor.
The dinosaur killer.
The very one. So if it is an impact crater, we're talking about an event of similar magnitude. It really helps you grasp the potential scale.
And naturally, this opens up some fascinating, though still speculative, ideas about what such an impact might have done to Earth's history.
Indeed. The transcript touches on theories suggesting that if the Wilkes Land event was an impact, it could have played a major role in Earth-shattering events.
Like triggering superplumes, those massive volcanic eruptions.
Potentially, yes. Disrupting the Earth's magnetic field, maybe even contributing to major extinction events. The Permian-Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, is mentioned as a possibility. That was the biggest extinction event we know of.
So an impact in Antarctica could have caused global catastrophe. It really makes you realize how interconnected everything is.
It absolutely does. It's a reminder that Earth's history is punctuated by these colossal, violent events that can completely reshape life on the planet, maybe even creatively in a destructive sort of way.
Which then, of course, opens the door to some really imaginative ideas presented in the transcript.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Well, the idea that such a cataclysm could have somehow, I don't know, accelerated evolution, led to advanced life emerging in Antarctica when it was maybe warmer.
And then they conveniently retreated underground as it froze over.
Something like that. The transcript even hints at purely speculative connections to ancient megalithic sites in South America, or those Suka legends we started with.
Okay, yeah. We need to pump the brakes there a bit. These are very speculative links. We're moving far from mainstream science now.
Right. Important distinction.
While scientists acknowledge a massive impact or plume in Wilkes Land would have had huge geological and environmental effects, the leap to advanced civilizations hiding underground currently has zero empirical support. It's pure hypothesis based on linking disparate mysteries.
And the transcript also briefly mentions the supposed 2-kilometer-wide Antarctic pyramid.
Yeah, that falls firmly into the category of unsubstantiated claims, likely misidentified natural geological features. There's no credible scientific evidence for artificial pyramids in Antarctica.
Okay, good clarification. Let's bring our focus back to the scientifically explored underground world then. The subglacial lakes.
Much more solid ground here. The transcript mentions over 400 of these lakes identified so far. Bodies of liquid water isolated beneath the massive ice sheet.
400. That's amazing in itself. And the big one, the star player, is Lake Vostok, right?
Lake Vostok is definitely the most famous and one of the largest. It's located deep beneath Russia's Vostok station.
It's huge, isn't it?
Absolutely massive. About 250 kilometers long, 50 wide, up to 1,200 meters deep in places. And it's been sealed off from the surface by miles of ice for potentially millions of years.
Millions of years in isolation. It's mind-boggling to think about a body of water that large just sitting there in the dark. What secrets could be hiding down there?
That's the driving question for scientists. This extreme isolation makes it a potential haven for unique life forms, adapted to cold, darkness, high pressure, and unusual chemistry.
And in 2023, the transcript reminds us, Russian scientists finally managed to drill into Lake Vostok itself.
A major technological feat after decades of effort.
And they found life. Over 3,500 DNA sequences recovered from the water samples.
That's right. The majority, about 94%, were from bacteria, as expected in such an environment. About 6% were from eukaryotes, organisms with complex cells.
But the really intriguing part, there were two unknown sequences in that eukaryote group, DNA that didn't match anything known.
Exactly, and identifying these is an ongoing process. The transcript mentions one possibility is that one sequence could belong to a type of Antarctic fish,
A fish living under miles of ice.
a specific type called a crinodothenoid. These are fascinating fish, part of the notothenoid group, that have evolved amazing adaptations like antifreeze proteins in their blood to survive the extreme cold of the Southern Ocean. Finding their DNA in Lake Vostok would be incredible, pushing the known limits of vertebrate life.
Wow. Okay, and then there's the other story, the, shall we say, more colorful one, the urban legend about intelligent octopus-like beings in Lake Vostok, Project 46B.
Ah, yes, the Lake Vostok monster myth. Thankfully, the transcript clarifies this is pure fiction, a fabrication that spread online, not based on any scientific findings.
Good to know. No intelligent octopus is confirmed.
Correct. While the thought of complex life is captivating, there's zero evidence for that particular story. However, the transcript does mention the current Russian scientific speculation about the other unknown DNA sequence.
What are they thinking it might be?
Possibly a small mollusk. Maybe something related to the octopuses or similar creatures we do find in modern Antarctic waters today. That's a much more plausible, scientifically grounded possibility than intelligent overlords.
A tiny mollusk makes more sense than a kraken, yeah. Which leads to the playful question posed in the transcript.
Let me guess. Could Lake Vostok be some kind of Antarctic underground fish farm?
You got it. It's a fun thought experiment, even if it's just speculation for now. Okay, final category of Antarctic mysteries. Nazi bases, and this one surprised me, Antarctic oil.
Right. The legend of a secret Nazi base in Antarctica after World War II is persistent, tied up with Operation High Jump in 1946.
The huge U.S. naval expedition led by Admiral Richard Byrd. Thousands of personnel, aircraft carriers, submarines. The scale alone makes you wonder.
It certainly fueled speculation about its true purpose, absolutely.
And that ties into the other persistent urban legend. Admiral Byrd supposedly encountering some kind of subterranean civilization or UFOs down there.
That's the more extreme version of the myth, yeah. But what does the declassified history actually tell us about Nazi activity?
The transcript clarifies this.
It does. Declassified records confirm Nazi Germany did establish a base, or at least a supply depot, in an area they claimed as Neuschwabenland.
But not some super secret fortress.
No. Its main purpose seems to have been much more mundane, securing a source of whale oil. They were facing wartime shortages of fats and oils for industry and food. Whaling was a potential solution.
So less Hidden Reich and more whale oil depot.
Pretty much. Allied investigations after the war looked into it and concluded the base was relatively small, strategically insignificant. Not the hidden stronghold of conspiracy theories, more like a glorified whaling outpost.
That definitely deflates the myth a bit. But then the transcript drops a real bombshell. Breaking news from May 2025.
This was quite recent, yeah. Russia's state oil company reportedly discovered a massive oil field in Antarctica.
And when they say massive, they mean massive. 511 billion barrels.
It's a staggering number. Enough, the transcript suggests, to potentially supply the entire global demand for maybe 15 years.
That discovery is huge. Even with the Antarctic Treaty supposedly protecting the continent, finding a resource that big has to have massive geopolitical implications down the line, doesn't it? What kind of long-term ripples could this cause?
It's definitely a game changer in terms of resource potential, and the transcript highlights a particularly weird detail.
What kind?
This massive oil field appears to be located within a large geological cavity, and there are indications it might have been previously exploited.
Previously exploited? How? By whom? That raises a whole new set of questions about who might have been doing what in Antarctica and when.
Exactly. It adds another layer of mystery onto an already significant discovery.
But, as the transcript reminds us, there's the Antarctic Treaty. It strictly limits any resource exploitation, right? It's all supposed to be for peaceful, scientific purposes only.
That's the current international agreement, yes. So for the time being, this colossal oil find is essentially off-limits for commercial drilling.
Which leads, the transcript notes, to one final, very thought-provoking, almost conspiratorial question. Could the Antarctic Treaty itself be less about nations agreeing with each other and more like some kind of agreement made with a hypothetical Antarctic civilization to keep us away?
Okay, wow. That's certainly an unconventional way to frame the treaty. Highly speculative, of course. But in the context of all these other mysteries we've just discussed,
It does make you go, doesn't it? It might linger in the back of your mind.
it might.
Absolutely. So let's just recap this whole deep dive. We've touched on the possibility of ancient humans, maybe connected across poles.
Yeah.
We heard the wild tale of Dirk China and his singing ice.
The eerie music from the Ross Ice Shelf, those gigantic voids appearing and disappearing beneath the ice.
The strange nanospheres in the blood falls linking maybe to Mars or the Moon. The colossal gravity anomaly in Wilkes Land and its potential global impact.
The unique life possibly evolving in isolated subglacial lakes like Vostok. Debunking the Nazi base myth, but uncovering its real, more mundane origins.
And finally, this discovery of a gigantic, maybe previously tapped, oil field under the ice.
Phew. Yeah, what this deep dive really reveals, I think, is that Antarctica is just so much more complex and fascinating than that simple image of a frozen wasteland.
Totally. It's a continent just brimming with mysteries, where modern science sometimes finds echoes of these strange old stories, and where our understanding is clearly still evolving, constantly being challenged.
Absolutely. Nothing is quite set in stone, so to speak, when it comes to understanding Antarctica.
And that leaves us, and you listening, with one final, maybe slightly unsettling thought. Given all this evidence, all these hints and unresolved questions, what are the true secrets still hidden beneath that vast Antarctic ice sheet?
What might future exploration with even better technology finally uncover about our planet's deepest history? Maybe about other forms of life? Or even, dare we say, intelligence?
It's still a truly vast and icy frontier, isn't it? The potential for just groundbreaking, world-changing discoveries seems almost limitless down there. Lots to ponder.